The button has been pushed. Hello and welcome. We got a big episode for you guys today because we are here to support somebody that needs our support in this community. And I'm not talking about bowling and bluegrass. We'll get to that later because that was a great success. But because we were able to raise so much money, I found out about a wonderful local band here in Colorado that is this close to raising enough money to getting their first album recorded and going on a national tour. I want to welcome Stephen, George, and Matt from the Tonewood String Band. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
For sure. I know we're missing a couple, but that doesn't matter. We'll give Elijah some shit later. I was telling my buddy, we were at the Magoo show 2 weeks ago, and Elijah was sitting there picking on his banjo, and I turned to my buddy Shay, who's my co-host, who's normally here, but he's got a real fucking job. And I was like, bro, he looks like Ned Flanders playing the fucking banjo. And then I said, we need to make a picture with him where Ned Flanders is in the ski suit. And he says, it feels like I'm not wearing it. Like, dude. And I was like, I'm going to Photoshop Elijah's face onto that fucking picture.
Oh, I'll make it for you, bro. I've done graphic design long enough. I could do that in like 20 minutes.
Dude, I'm going to do it too. And that's my bread and butter. So I was telling these guys, like, I own a digital marketing agency. And so that's where some of this stuff happened. The podcast itself came from some viral moments and Billy Strings folding posters and throwing chairs. And then Andy Frasco has helped me out a bunch. And now we're just here off and running. And so what I've been doing is last week we had Andy Hall on, and like, obviously the Dusters are established, right? But for me, what I wanted to do is there's so many of us that love this music, love this scene, but they don't realize what goes into it, right? What goes into it as a band, the evolution of bands, having members, recording music, going in. So can we first start off? I want to say, Matt, do you know the actual number of how much we need to raise to get you over the top for the Kickstarter?
At this point, it looks like $2,500.
That ain't shit, okay? I'm going to challenge every what's the reason for this listener. We have that many listeners within the first day of our episode going live. If you all go on to Kickstarter, we will put all the links into the description of the page on the podcast. There's a $5 tier. If half of us go in and pay $5 to help support this band, we can help Tonewood get their first album recorded. So let's talk a little bit about this. So you guys, how long have you been around for a band? Where did you start? How did you meet each other? And how's it been going?
We started in 2021. Basically, we played our first show kind of just as a pickup band at Mile High Spirits. And it was me and Evan, our guitar player, and our original bass player, Adrian. And we played like 3 hours. It was, post-pandemic. We didn't even meet up and practice. We just kind of showed up and played some music, man. And it was a great time. And I was like, well, we should keep doing this. And that was how we got started. And from there, it was just kind of like off to the races. We played a couple of festivals that we had connections with and just started gigging. We played well over 100 shows a year pretty much since then. And it just got started with the interest of like all of us being like, hey, we like bluegrass and we want to do something that's a little bit different than just like straight bluegrass. So we started kind of as a jam band, and as time's gone on and the lineups changed a little bit, we've kind of morphed more into a traditional bluegrass band.
Yeah, but that's what's so beauty about the evolution of music. Like, people try to typecast and say, oh, this is this type of band, or they play this type of music, right? But for you guys, you're artists. And so being able to curate and create your own sounds, and like as your band starts to evolve and have pieces come and go, you have strengths and you have different skill sets of different members of that band, right? So were you guys, George, were you or Evan or anyone in a band beforehand? Were you just pickers that were just loving the instrument, or how did that kind of go?
Interestingly, I think we've all come from kind of very different backgrounds. Evan was a film student when I first met him, and I met him at now no longer running a bluegrass pick that was happening up at Kettle and Spoke Brewery up in Boulder. And I was like, hey man, you're pretty good. And he was like, you're pretty good, man, we should play together. But his background before that is he was a drummer, and he was actually studying music at Berkeley in Boston, and I think playing more like indie rock sort of stuff, and so that was his background. And I guess through pandemic he got more into guitar and started playing bluegrass, and then started coming to picks. And it's kind of the same story for me, where I played Celtic music a lot. I
Okay.
actually studied classical performance in college, and then got really kind of fed up with the classical scene because it doesn't really leave a lot of room for creativity. It's kind of just play what's written on the page as best you can.
Yeah.
And so I found Celtic music, and then I actually played Middle Eastern music for about 10 years before pandemic happened,
So what
and
kind
was
of
really tied in with
string
that.
instruments were you playing?
Say again?
What kind of string instruments were you playing? Was it all the mandolin, or what were you playing?
I've played, my first instrument was viola, and
Yeah.
that was what I studied through college. And in college, they were like, if you want to be a performance major for viola, you have to learn violin. And so I got a violin on a rent-own from Kalasny's, and then realized I could make a lot more money and have more fun playing violin because everybody wants a good violinist. I picked up mandolin when I was like 18 and had played it, through the years, but not really ever done it professionally before Tonewood. And I learned a bunch of other, I actually studied cello for 3 years in college, and I learned the Arabic oud while I was playing Middle Eastern music. So don't really have the opportunity to play that much now, but I do play a bunch of different string instruments.
George, you better fucking bust out the oud at a show sometime.
It's a goal. It's
Yeah.
definitely there are plans for sure to have some features for that sort of thing in the future.
Well, that's what's so cool is like people don't understand like the evolution of music and what goes in. You're very right. Like classical music is like, hey, there is no room for interpretation. Like this is your roadmap. This is what you do. And then I feel like jazz kind of opened that jam up to allow people to kind of like meld and flow together.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that drew you into Celtic music? And then how the hell did you get into Middle Eastern music?
Well, Celtic music, I grew up with, my mom was a guitarist, and she grew up kind of in Wisconsin, but then she lived in Virginia for a while and got into the Appalachian folk music scene. Yeah, go Pack. And so from there, she pretty much like had already kind of had the framework for it. I grew up listening to a bunch of different music because both my parents were country radio DJs, and that's how they met. They both moved to Aspen and ended up
Oh
working on a
man.
radio show together. It was like a morning country radio show. And so I grew up with like a really wide variety of music just because both my parents listened to like everything. It was everything from like Frank Zappa and, funk music to classical music to some Celtic music that my mom had growing up, and a lot of Doc Watson and Jerry Garcia and David Grisman's Shady Grove album and things like that. I remember just like having on repeat when I was a kid. And so I was always super focused on classical music through college, and I had always kind of had the interest in playing Celtic music because my mom took me to contra dances when I was growing up, which is basically like line dancing but with Celtic music and other kinds of music, and it's a little bit more complex as far as like the footwork and everything goes. So I had the interest in it, and then I got a gift of the Fiddler's Fake book, which is this like 500 plus song book that I started just playing songs through. And I got a random gig offer like, hey, you play any Celtic music? You want to play violin for this, St. Patrick's Day show that I've got going on? And that's kind of what got me started in that. And then right
How
after
old
I
were
got
you at
out of
that time?
college,
How old were you at that time?
I was like 22, 23, I think, when I really started playing Celtic music. And then through that, my mom had a friend in that contra dance scene named Pam that was a banjo player. And she had a friend that I'm still very good friends with named Katrine, who has a Lebanese band. And she's originally from Beirut, from Haifa. She's from Haifa, Palestine. And they were like looking for a violinist because their violinist was moving to Chicago at the time. And I played I did a couple of practices with them and really didn't know anything about the music at all. And then played a couple of small gigs with them, and they were like, you're doing pretty well. Do you want to keep playing this music with us? And I was like, I'm actually enjoying it, and it's different than anything I've ever done. Yeah, let's do it. And so from there, I pretty much taught myself how to play Arabic violin, because there's no sheet music for it, at least in English. I don't speak Arabic, and
Can't read.
I pretty much they sent me recordings, and we practiced a lot, and I picked it up from there, and then I started going to a couple of different Middle Eastern music camps and studied with a few different conservatory trained musicians over the years to get better at the style. But it was just something that I fell into, and then I just kind of fell in love with the music and really enjoyed the band I was playing with, and we went from there. And 10 years later, I've played Arabic music, Lebanese, Palestinian music. I've played Israeli music, like the whole gamut. I was working with a Persian community out here for about 4 years pre-pandemic, doing events with them, and a Turkish singer as well that just moved out of Colorado. I'm just
crazy.
kind of
And
as a support.
We're doing it all by ear? So you would hear it and then have to. So then, were you writing it down and making your own tabs, or you just remember?
Actually, yeah, I it's something that if you're an American musician learning that style of music, you end up just making your own cheat sheets or charts or whatever you need. And I found out that there was like not really that much out there, so I started making my own. And I actually in 2018 I published a book of sheet music that I had made that's all Arabic sheet music, all Middle Eastern sheet music from a bunch of different places, that I called the Songbook of the East, and that's like 125 Arabic, Israeli, Turkish, Persian, Armenian songs in one book. So that was my background in that. I got really into it. I was actually to the point where I was teaching a little bit like beginner violin at these music camps by the end of that time.
That's amazing. So you ended up making the resources for other future musicians that you wish that you had had when you started.
Exactly. I feel like I came full circle in that I got brought into it by a few people that had been doing this for years and making charts, and they gave them to me. And then I kind of took everything that I had gotten and everything I had made and reformatted that using music publishing software and made it into a fully realized kind of fake book, as you will, for Middle Eastern music that I never actually fully got publishing for it, just because there's a lot of copyright stuff and red tape I would have to get through. But I do make the book myself and self-print it, and I sell it on my website, which is just my name, georgesetmeyer.com.
That's awesome. So if somebody else is looking into it, then let's get it done. Steven, how the hell did you get here? Where'd your journey start? How did you get into music?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up on the East Coast. I've only been out in Colorado for about 3 years now. I was just
You're the one that ruined all of our traffic.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Actually, it's much better out here than it was where I was. I was in Northern Virginia for a good 15 years or so, and kind of fell in with a bluegrass band out there that I was with for about 7 or 8 years before I moved out here. Played a little bit of cajon with them, a little bit of bass with them, and I was singing with them.
And hold on, you gotta talk to simpletons, because yes, that is the technical term, but the cajon is the box, right?
Yes, yeah. So the cajon is it's basically just a box with a snare mechanism in it, so you can sort of simulate drum set sounds, bass and snare, very simplistically. I think it fits very well with bluegrass, although you'll have your bluegrass traditionalists that don't love any percussion in bluegrass music, but the way that I use it is mostly with a train beat, just kind of try to take away the chop from some of the other members of the bands to free them up to to be a little more creative and throw some tasty licks in.
Yeah, but that's what's cool about the evolution of music, right? And you guys can continue to create and evolve, and we've seen bluegrass bands that have incorporated drums, right, and percussion, and it's kind of what you do with it. So you said that you were in a bluegrass band. Is that kind of where you had always been? What was your foundation in music? What was the aha moment that made you start chasing this dream?
Sure. Growing up, I learned a few chords on the guitar, and I learned I always knew I liked to sing, so I would just try to learn songs, folk songs and even pop stuff, just learn the chord progressions and sing along with them at home. But I didn't really start playing in front of people until probably I was 25 or 26 or so, and just met a few musicians who I enjoyed playing with, and like I said, kind of eventually fell into the bluegrass thing. I wasn't really looking for it. I wasn't really into bluegrass at the time, but it seemed so approachable, and the songs structurally are simple enough to where if you only know a few chords, you can kind of follow along and jump into jams and play music with other people without a ton of rehearsal. And then at least you can start that way. But there's enough of a ceiling with some of this bluegrass stuff to where, if you do put the time in and you do rehearse with the group and get real tight, you can make something pretty special.
Now, let's talk about the transition for you guys, because like practicing and playing in your basement or in a room with some people to now like George going to these public picks, right? And now it's like that puckering moment of like, fuck, I need to do this in front of other people, right? Like, how was that for you guys to get over that moment? And what would you tell some of these musicians now that are afraid to like take that step and like go play in front of people?
Well, for me, it's, like I was saying, I played Middle Eastern music, and my background was classical, and then I did a little bit of Celtic and then Middle Eastern, and I pretty much found bluegrass through pandemic and kind of reconnected with, like, I'd grown up listening to some of this music, and so I was like, well, why am I not playing this stuff? It seems pretty fun. And it was definitely, for me, like the first few jams, the first few picks that I went to, um, I was pretty, in my own head about it. I was pretty nervous about like trying to play music with a group that, we've never practiced it, and I don't know what they're going to call, and, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick it up or not, but I was
Were you
pretty,
playing the violin or the mandolin?
it really depended. I was doing both. And normally at this point, I just bring both, because if you've got a good fiddle player at the start, I would just play mandolin, or a lot of the time it's like I'll bring the mando in case there's not a mandolinist, because it's good to have that chop.
Yeah.
But most of the time I play violin, and that was most of what I was focusing on, because that's my primary instrument when I first got into the bluegrass scene in Colorado.
And
And
then
it was just like, I just really, what I would say to people is like, don't be afraid to do it. Everybody I met has become like really good friends. It's a really welcoming community. There's no way you can do it wrong unless you're just like, either you play a washboard or you're really just not listening at all. Like,
and then what about for somebody like you, Steven, who has the voice of an angel, by the way, if nobody has ever seen this fucking band before. Steven's got we talk about chops. Steven's got it. And he gets serious when he stands up. Because he needs the air. But like what, because like for me, like I've done stand-up comedy, I've spoken in front of thousands of people, you get like that butthole puckering, like, all right, let's fucking do this. And I was just talking or telling stupid jokes. You are now singing, right? So like, what is the pressure like that, or what goes on in your head? And I feel like a lot of the musicians I talk to, so many of you guys are like perfectionists, right? You're like, no, it's got to be like this. And so like, there's so much room for error, and I feel like a lot of people are afraid to try things because they're afraid to fail. But I feel like what you have to do is just kind of fail forward and fuck up and learn from it. So what was that like for you, Steve?
Yeah, I think the first few times that you do that you really put yourself out there are very scary, and you're always, you're terrified that people are gonna, throw things at you, and that you're not any good, you're not good enough. But what I'll say is that when you do have these moments from time to time where you really notice that people really really like, and they're really enjoying what you're doing, and whether that's, clapping or yelling, or lately there's been some chants of band members' names and things like that. It gets you going, and you don't forget about those things very quickly, and that those things build on each other, and you kind of get you build your confidence that way, and that way the next bigger stage that you haven't hit yet is a little less scary every time you do that. And the other thing I'll say is that having the support of your bandmates, when you know that you have put the time in and you have a really tight group and a tight sound, that takes a lot of that pressure off, and it allows you to kind of just be more creative and have a lot more fun with it, and not worry too much about how folks may react.
So let's talk about some of that evolution. So George, I know that you said it was you, Evan, and Adrian that had originally met at that pick.
Mm-hmm.
What was the progression like? How did it come about? Because now we have multiple different newer members in the band. You're adding new pieces.
Mm-hmm.
What did that look like?
It has been pretty darn organic growth, really. The first year was we were kind of like a power trio. I was playing mostly mandolin and just doing chop. Adrian played bass, Evan played guitar, and like I said, we were pretty much like a jamgrass band for that first year. Practice was pretty loose. We smoked a lot of pot together. And as time went on, we were like, let's we started getting more serious and getting better as a band, better musically and tighter together. And Elijah actually came into the band about a year later.
Okay.
And
How'd you
he had
find
seen
him?
us play and just wanted to play with us. And it was one of those, like, we'd been hurt by banjo players in the past. So we've had like a long storied time trying to find a banjo player. When we first started the band, we had a 5-piece essentially. And
Wow.
that was Adrian's buddy Eric playing. I think I'm forgetting his last name, but he lives in the Springs. But his buddy Eric was playing drum set with us, and we had a good buddy of mine, Kyler Brown, playing banjo with us. And Kyler left the band about 6 months in because he and his wife had their first child, and he wanted to be able to support his family and do that thing. So we said, we're sad to lose you, and best of luck and goodbye to him. We tried out probably 3 different banjo players before we found Elijah and before Elijah came into the group. And our second one was this guy Johnny, who ended up going back to rehab in Indiana for some substance abuse stuff, and he played like 2 shows with us. And then we tried out another guy that ended up and this was crazy, he had a brain tumor. He came into the band and then found out he had a brain tumor and had to quit the band. And then so we were like, all right, no more banjo players. And like at that point we were just like gonna be a trio and just gonna kind of like how our buddies Magoo started, where they just started as a power trio,
Yep.
and so for like another 6 months, we were just kind of like a power trio. And Elijah saw us play, and he was like, "These guys are great." He knew Evan already; they had met at a couple of different picks and played together. And he was like, "I really want to play with you guys." And we, for a while, we were like, "No way, man! Like we've been hurt by banjo players in the past, so we can't do it." And eventually, we let him come to a practice, and he meshed, and it was great. And we were all like, well, we really like him, I think we should have him play. And so we brought him into the group, and right as we brought him into the group, we started having some issues with Adrian, our original bass player, just not being available enough, and it came to a point where it was just too stressful for him to go on with us. And so Elijah came into the group. We dropped our first EP. This was like March last year, and did a sold out show right off the bat. EP release show at Woods Boss Brewing with the 4-piece, which was like stellar. And then from there, it was like 2 months of drama, figuring out, letting Adrian, go from the band and pursue his own thing. And at that point, Steve came to Whiskey Pick, which is a pick that Evan had started hosting up at this distillery in North Denver called Tig Brothers. And we heard his sweet angelic voice, and we went out after that pick and ended up playing some pool. And Steve kicked my ass royally at pool. And after that, I was like, we're going to be friends, and I think you should come and play with my band. And we originally brought Steve in as a bass player because we were looking to fill the the bass
Adrian
player
spot.
spot. And then come to find out, oh, Steve also plays cajon, and besides his angelic voice, he's got a few different talents. And so we had kind of been exploring the idea of having a couple of bass players, just so if somebody wasn't available, we'd have a backup sort of person. And at that point, Evan was like, "Hey, I know this guy Matt, and he's really, really good on bass, and I think we should, bring him in." So for a while, we were kind of like balancing between Steve playing and Matt playing with us, and we hadn't given either of them an answer as far as like, you're in the band. And Steve and Matt were both awesome, and we all loved them. And so I sat down with Evan and Silver, our band manager, and they were like, "Well, I want both of them. We want both of them." And so we kind of courted both of them, and brought them both on full time. And Silver got down on one and proposed to Matt at Rocky Grass this year, and now he's our lawfully wedded bass player, and Steve's our lawfully wedded cajon player and singer, and still fills that upright bass role for us when Matt's not available or he's touring with the Stillhouse Junkies or one of his other bands.
For sure. Can you talk a little bit about the commitment? Because I think people don't realize like how much goes into this with practice, because you said you were playing 100 shows a year, right? That's
Yeah,
every
yeah.
2 days you guys are going to play a new fucking show. So what does that look like? What is the stress like for that? How does it go with your manager curating some of these dates? How far in advance do you know, like, oh, hey, we got X, Y, and Z? Because as a smaller band, as you're up and coming, it's not like some of these other bands are like, oh, I played this venue and then next year I'm going to play the same venue at this time. That's just not how it works, right?
Yeah. I mean, unless you got a really good contract or you're really established, you're going to be kind of picking it up as you go. And frankly, it's like we played Tico Time this year, and we're not going to be on the bill next year because they don't want to bring the same bands back. They want to keep some variety going. So you don't get the opportunity a lot of time to keep doing the same repeat gigs a lot of places. And that booking for us, initially the first year before we brought Silver in to manage the band, I was doing all the booking. So I was managing the band and trying to play in the band, and it was just a lot. And we actually had a couple of moments in that first year where like stuff hadn't got on the calendar because it was all of us trying to do booking at once, and like we damn near missed a gig actually up at Howlin' Wind the first time we were going to go up and play at Howlin' Wind in Rollinsville, because it just hadn't gotten on the calendar and we forgot about it, and 3 months later it was like, oh well, we've got this gig tomorrow, let's go play that. And it's like you say, it's a commitment to be in a band that's playing as much as we are, even from the start, and touring, and we all have day jobs still, so it's definitely a work-life balance is kind of an interesting thing when you're in a band and you're trying to take it seriously, and
Free time, what free time?
yeah, exactly. No, I recently I messed around with the idea of having a girlfriend recently, and that was her main complaint, was like, hey man, you're really not that available ever. And I'm like, yeah, that's just kind of how my life is. I just kind of work all the time. And if I'm not working my day job, then I'm working with the band, and I get, one day off a week to do laundry if I'm lucky. And, that's kind of, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love what I do. I love making music with these guys. And, if I can do more to support that, I'm always kind of down to do it. But yeah, generally it's, if you're going to play a gig or two a weekend and trying to have a day job, you're not going to really have that much free time at all.
That's why you were saying, like, hey, we got down on one knee and we asked these guys to be in the band, because it's a huge commitment, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
for people to truly commit, because you had already seen the difficulties of like filling those empty voids, because now, okay, we don't have a bassist. How do we play a show? Right? Like, you got all this momentum to finally get the shows built, and now you can't follow through because you don't have the pieces in place.
Mm-hmm.
How often are you guys practicing? And then obviously you're coming out with your first album. How often are you guys writing music?
A great question. So practicing is, we try and meet up as much as we can. Generally, it's about once a week.
Where are
For
you
the
guys
last
meeting
few
up at?
months,
Where do you guys meet up at?
Steve has a really nice house, and I've helped him build out his basement to kind of be a little studio for
Is
us to
that
be
where
able
you're
to
at right
record
now,
demos.
Steve? I can see all the soundproofing behind you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the room that I'm in now. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
my day job, I actually I'm manager for an audio and acoustics installation company.
So you can
When I
fix
first
all my
met Steve, he was
podcast
talking about
audio
he wanted to
bullshit.
build a studio, and I was like, well, I can do that for you. And so we've collaborated on just kind of building out his basement over time into a pretty sweet recording spot.
That's awesome. But so then what about for like the creative aspect, right? Because like you're practicing, you're trying to get stuff done. Like, when do you guys have the time to like sit down and write? And what does your creative process look like when you're trying to lay down some new lyrics or new tracks for new music?
A lot of that, I would say, we do kind of in our practices. So we'll all have, I'll bring sketches. I'll bring, like, here, I've got some songs that I have some ideas about, and let's play through them and see if we like them, if they fit the band, and we can work on them from there. So a lot of what we've done with the songs on the album that we're planning to record are kind of a collaboration. I did a lot of, I've been a songwriter basically since I was like 18. Since I first decided I wanted to be a serious musician, I've been writing songs. And so the band kind of started with a few songs I had written back in the day for other projects, or things I'd written that just like I never really was with a group that could play them. And then from there, I tend to just kind of write all the time. So that's my way of doing it, is I just kind of always have music in my head. I always have things that I just need to get down on paper. And from there, I bring it to the group and we kind of play through it. We work the idea of the song, and we'll talk about like we could do this with the arrangement, or it'd be really cool if we put a stop right here, or these lyrics don't really seem to work here, or that rhyme scheme's a little funky here, like what can we do about that? And it's become very much kind of a collaborative writing process generally in our practice, and a lot more so when we're not like on the road. Like over the summer, we haven't had as much time to practice just because we're playing so much. But in the winter months, and when we're not as busy, we tend to hone the songs and hone the arrangements a little bit more.
So with the new album, do you, and you don't have to give up too much, do you have like a favorite hook or a favorite line that you like wrote or you put together and you're like that's the one, that's what I want to work on?
I tend to, and this is just in like you were saying, like I think all musicians, most artists are generally perfectionists, and it's our artwork to us, it's like you make something and then you look at it and you're too close to it to really like see what it means or really be able to get the feel of like what it's gonna be in the long run. But this summer I've really just seen like there are a couple of songs that we've been playing pretty much through the summer, the stuff that's going to be on the album. But one song that I wrote that I was like, I think this is going to be a fun song to do, but I don't want to sing it. I want Steve to sing this song, and it's called "I'm Feeling Blue." It's a waltz tune, and I was just like, I could sing this, but I love the way Steve sings. He needs more features. I want him to sing this song, and it's become, from everybody's responses, from our audience, from band members, it's just become one of our strongest songs in terms of like it ticks all the boxes. It's simple, it's good, it's got great vocal harmony, it's got Steve's rock and angelic lead. Like that song has really kind of become one of my favorites that we do right now.
That's awesome. Steve, for you, how did it feel like being a newer member in the band, right? You don't want to come in and like shake everything up because there's already something that's already been established, but you also, no pun intended, have your own voice, right? And there's things that you want to bring to that. So how was that evolution for you, and how was it comfort wise to go in and give your advice, or kind of what you wanted to do, or how you wanted to change and manipulate some of the music?
Yeah, I learned a long time ago through various other band experiences that I was in that my favorite role in a group like this is more of a supporting role. I don't know if that's related to just kind of constantly being in the rhythm section, whether it's percussion or bass or what, but I learned a long time ago I don't love being a front man. I don't love the whole talking to the crowd and really trying to keep everyone's attention. But at the same time, I really do like to sing lead. And I learned that those are two very different roles, singing lead versus the frontman role. And so it's a perfect fit. I mean, I can add my opinions when I have them and when I think that they're valid. But a lot of the other times I can kind of maintain more of a supporting role.
So you must really love when George kicks it back to you and tells the entire crowd that we're going to now have Steve sing a song and there's no pressure whatsoever, right?
Yeah, I think the guys at this point know, that sometimes I get a little bit embarrassed when some things happen on stage, and so they'll start the Steve chants.
But how fucking cool was that, right? Like at the show at Globe Hall, like, first off, okay, like he kicks it to you, like how great does that feel to like have your bands believe in you? Then you go and fucking crush it, right? And now the song ends, and now the crowd is chanting your name to be like, fuck yeah, right? Like that's pretty special. That's
Yeah, it means a lot, and it sort of goes back to what I said earlier about having your bandmates support and having them behind you, and that it helps immensely, because if you are a little bit nervous or you're not totally sure of yourself, having something like that lead into a song and then having the crowd react to it positively is it's a game changer, and it helps a lot, and gives you the confidence to do it again at the next show.
Well, it's pretty fucking cool and very special what you guys are doing. Now let's talk about like the point of why we're doing this, which is raising the money for their Kickstarter so that Tonewood can get their album recorded. Let's talk about the number. What was the total number for the Kickstarter campaign? Was it 38,000?
31,945.
How the fuck do you come to that number, George? Like what?
So that is a good question, and that number was very kind of debated for a long time before we actually started the Kickstarter. We were initially thinking a much lower number, and really we settled at 32. because Kickstarter takes their own cut of the action. It's like 8% fee that goes to Kickstarter. We also have to pay year-end taxes on any money we receive. That is not like,
As a gift
free money.
tax.
So we needed to cover that. We needed to cover the cost of, we worked with a consultant who's a really awesome guy named Travis McNamara of Trout Steak Revival, who basically worked with us to set up our Kickstarter for success, make sure that we had all of the tools in place. And he had suggested that we needed to really think on that number and make sure that that we're not just covering the recording, mixing, mastering expenses for the album, which we estimated we're trying to do 12 songs. We're estimating about $1,000 per song for if we're going to do 1 day of studio time to record each song, and mixing plus mastering, it's going to be about that much per song. And then we also wanted to be able to bring in a producer. So that's a little bit more money on top right there. And then there's also the costs involved with printing the album, distribution, publishing, and also fulfilling all of our merch and reward packages for the Kickstarter. Basically, we did the math on all of that, and 32,000 was like the minimum that we could go with that would fully fund everything we were looking to do for the album and for being able to actually just get it out to the world. Because what good is recording a great album if nobody's going to hear it? If the first 90% of the work is recording it, and the other 10%, the other 90%, I'll call it, is like getting it on good Spotify playlists, getting video taken, being able to release singles and to fully support the album from a marketing perspective. And we put in a little bit extra. I think it was like $1,500. That's just tour support. So that's basically, we can take lower paying opportunities to be able to bring our band to places like, like throughout the state. Durango Bluegrass Meltdown is one we haven't confirmed yet, but I'm hoping we'll be on in the future. Just being able to have some financial backing to support getting the music out to the world was the thought.
So do you guys have like a cargo van? What are we doing when we start this tour? What's going on?
Right now, we do not. That is a question that I've been noodling on in my own head for a while now. Ideally, by next spring, I'm going to be hopefully pulling the trigger on something so that we can support longer tour stints. But right now, we are just kind of rolling up, carpool style. We'll take 2 or 3 cars and fit everybody in and
all
just
your
roll
gear
to
and
the
all the
gig.
shit and just get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about some of these tiers, right? So if people don't understand with Kickstarter, first off, there's a big rollout, right? And the gentleman from Trout Steak helps you guys out because you have a very clean, beautiful video that kind of talks about you guys. It's great lighting. It's an interview style to kind of learn about Tonewood. Who the fuck are you? What are you trying to do, right? And it's beautiful. And again, we'll continue to link that so that people can see if you haven't heard them. But what they also do is they set up different tiers of donation, right? And so each tier has a monetary value, and with that monetary value comes some sort of incentive, right? People will understand that Billy Strings actually did this himself a few years ago, and what he did was a pink vinyl album. And now you go back and that pink vinyl fucking album sells for $500 or $700 just for the one fucking vinyl. So let's talk about some of the tiers where you guys are at, what you're offering, because there's been some really fun stuff. When I was scrolling through it, it's like, oh, that's cool. So I think the smallest one is just $5, right?
Yep. That is our smallest tier. Basically, I don't think you get a reward for $5. I think the minimum to get a reward is $10, and then you'll get a digital download of the album when it's released.
For sure. Well, we'll get you some slaps or something for $5. Let's fucking get them there. So for $10, I think, yes, you got, it was the digital download of the album. What's the next tier, and what are you guys offering from there? Steven, do you have it pulled up possibly?
Yeah, I've got it here, so we can kind of use it as a cheat sheet a little bit. But yeah, the next tier is at 25. You get the digital download, of course, and you also get a physical copy of the CD, and we'll ship it to you wherever you may be in the world.
So people understand is from each tier, as you go from one to the next, you actually collect all the gifts from the other tiers, correct?
For the most part, yeah, up until a certain point. But yeah, for the most part, you get the previous tiers included with each additional donation.
So $25, you can get an actual CD, you can get the digital download, and then what is the next level from there?
Yeah, so up at $50, you get a signed copy of the CD. We also will print your name in the liner notes, which is kind of a cool thing. Probably going to be pretty small, I'm guessing at this point, because there's a lot of folks that have been backing there. But there's a behind. We're going to have a behind the scenes pack of photos and recording footage and things like that. Some lyric sheets and just notes from some of the songs. That's at the $50 tier.
So what people have to think about is like, think about Patreon, right? Like sometimes we can have like, oh, hey, we'll do this podcast and people have asked us, oh, do you have like a subscription on Patreon where you can get like content that's not available to other people, right? Or something that's specifically for you. So that next tier is at the $50 tier where you're getting some of these behind the scenes photos and footage and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. That's at the $50 tier. Once you get up to 75, that's the merch pack. So you get the T-shirt, you get some hand-drawn album artwork, you get the
Now
hat.
hold on, I'm gonna give Magoo shit because I am not a small person. Oh, Matt, what the fuck is up? Hold on, I'm gonna shit on Eric and Dylan and the Magoo boys for a second. So not bad, but I am not a small human being. Matt, neither are you. Just judging, just because I've seen your fucking epic tower by that base. But Magoo doesn't have double XL shirts. I'm like, bro, I can't wear an XL. You want me to show a fucking muffin top to everybody while I tell people how much I love your band? Does Tonewood have a double XL shirt?
Yes, we do.
Fucking eat it, Eric. But so that's why it's cool, but people don't understand. Like, there's so many nuances that come into this, right? Like, even stuff like merch, because like when they buy shirts, it's like most people are medium, large, or extra large, right? But then you have people like my wife who is a small, and then people like me who's like a ginormous, but like you're limited on what you can purchase and buy in. So you get the shirt. What else do you get at the $75 level? Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, you get the shirt, a Tonewood hat, and then everything kind of included in the previous tiers that we went over just a few minutes ago.
And then the one that I'm stoked about is at $100. Now you're getting everything else that you listed before, and then you guys are actually focusing on having what you're calling a backers concert, correct?
Yeah, backers party. Sometime. Yeah, I think we're planning for February for that. But yeah, you'll get two tickets to a backers only party. We're thinking it's going to be near Castle Rock, but it hasn't entirely been nailed down. But yeah, that's a great opportunity to see us live and to meet us and shake the hands and for us to thank you kind of personally for your donation and for helping to make this whole thing happen.
But I want people to understand, it's not $100 and all this merch for one ticket. You're giving 2 tickets to that show for $100.
Yes,
and
exactly.
all this merch.
Yes.
So it's not like you guys are making a ton of money on this stuff, right? Like, think about what somebody spends on 2 concert tickets, buying a hat and a shirt at a show. You're going to be at $100 easily, right? Let's make sure that we're doing that so that we can help Tonewood. Now, there's also some more fun ones. So what else do you have going on?
Yeah, so once you get into the higher tiers, you start to get into more of the personalized sort of experience based rewards. So at $200, there's a handmade with love tier is what we're calling it, and it's it's a handful of things, more individual, more personalized from individual members of the band. George is he's coming up with a gluten-free recipe book because George is gluten-free, and I guess he's got a lot of recipe ideas that maybe people would be interested in learning about. Evan is very into bird watching, so he's gonna put together a bird watching book.
Evan's a bird watcher?
Yeah.
Man, the shit that we didn't get to know about. And then isn't there another tier where Elijah will bring me vinyl shopping?
Yeah, I think that's up a little further. That's like the
$500, I think.
I think that's this. So the 750 tier is the individual sort of meet up with a band member and enjoy, an evening with them doing doing one of the things that they love kind of outside of, musical performance. So Elijah's he knows a lot about records and record shopping. And so you can go shopping with him. Matt's into D&D, so you can have a D&D session with Matt.
Shit, that's awesome.
I'm a pool player, so you can come play pool with me if you want, and I'll try not to beat you too bad.
Do you let them win, Steve?
I don't know. I mean, for $750, maybe I would. I don't know.
No,
Maybe I'd have
fuck
to.
no. That is the wrong answer. You kick their ass, and just like George remembered you kicking his ass, they're gonna remember, be like, don't fucking play pool with that guy.
Right, right. Yeah, those are the individual ones at 750, but we kind of skipped over the $500 tier, which I think it's one of my favorite tiers. And that's a private song recording. So
I forgot about that.
you request a song, and we'll put together our version of it, bluegrass recording, or bluegrass version of it, and we'll record it.
And
we'll
this
make
is
a video.
any song, right?
Any song you want. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll give it our best shot. Now, I mean, some things may not translate as well to our particular instrumental group, but we'll give it our best go. We'll record a video of it and send you a private YouTube link, which you can just keep to yourself, or you can share if you want, or whatever you want to do with it. So, that's one of my favorite tiers for sure.
That's pretty badass. For people that have noticed, we have another person on the podcast. George keeps jumping in and out. Fucking internet. It's fun. But Matt is the bassist. He is the one that came on, you said, a little bit over a year ago, right?
Just over a year ago, yeah.
Yeah, and so Matt, can you talk a little bit just so that people can understand who you are and where your journey is? Because you're also, we know that you spent some time playing in another band as well. So how did you find Tonewood? What was your musical journey like? How did you get into stand-up bass and doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so I started playing electric bass when I was 13 years old, I think. I've basically been in bands ever since. So that's like 30 years of being in bands. I was playing in like a heavy, like psychedelic stoner rock band back in Philly for a long time. And I remember, here's the genesis. Here it is. I was like in my mid 20s, and I went to see my buddy play a show. And in the middle of his show, he busted out a mandolin and played a song on it. And I had this like light bulb in my head that was like, oh yeah, like I grew up going to the Philadelphia Folk Festival and watching, bluegrass bands and folk acts, and always wanted to learn to play mandolin. And now I have a job and I can buy one and do that. So I started playing mandolin, got into bluegrass. I started a band in Philly called Man About a Horse. Decided as the band got better, my mandolin playing did not. So I switched to upright bass, which I had dabbled on, on and off for years. And yeah, been primarily a bluegrass upright bass player ever since. I linked up with Tonewood. Let's see. I think I first met George and Evan at that Kettle and Spoke jam, probably 2 years ago. And then we were all camping at the Rocky Grass Bluegrass Festival in Lyons one year. And they were like, hey, we want to do this band contest, but we need somebody to play bass. So I did that with them. Basically, like, learned a couple songs like the night before the contest, went up there, gave it our best shot. It became I think, fourth time I've lost the Rocky Grass Band contest. And then here I am. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so at Rocky Grass, is it similar to Telluride, where it's an acoustic, an instrument, an original, and cover?
Acoustic.
Do you guys remember what you
played?
played?
It's a fast song, a slow song, and an instrumental are the rules. And we did, what did we do? We did 2 originals, When I'm Gone and Faith. And then our instrumental was an arrangement of a great traditional instrumental tune called Gold Rush.
That's awesome. Well, so now, thank you for that, Matt, because I wanted to make sure that people knew who you were and where you're coming on. I will chase down Evan and Elijah so that we can get some of them as well and learn about that fabulous mustache. But what I also want to talk about is how you guys have been raising money, because let's not pretend that you haven't put a fucking shitload of work into getting to where you are right now, which is this close to the finish line. Matt told us at the beginning of the episode it's $2,500. So what have you guys been doing? When did the Kickstarter begin? And what have you guys been doing to promote it? Because, I mean, I fucking see you everywhere now.
It's been, the lead up for the Kickstarter was like 2 months of planning. We started talking about doing the Kickstarter, I think, end of July this year. Yeah. And it's been 2 months of like working with Travis, our consultant, on it, and just kind of like getting everything set up, doing a video with our buddy Kyle Lucery of Foggy Mountain Spaceship. he did our video production. He's a great guy for the actual Kickstarter video. And then from there, it's been just like as much as we all can do of just reaching out to people individually that we think would be interested in what we're doing and want to support it. Just saying, hey, we're doing this thing. We're recording our debut album. Here's what we got going on. Check our Kickstarter out. And besides that, we all kind of pitched in and made videos for our Instagram and Facebook that we shared out. Tried to just, make some funny videos and some stuff, Silver, our manager, made some using some weird video editing app that basically just pastes band members' faces onto things. So
Yep.
But yeah, that was kind of like our initial plan for it. And then besides that, just sharing it out. We had basically a press release that we've been sharing out since the start of it to, try and get a little more interest maybe from local news stations or radio stations, things like that. And sharing it to local and national bluegrass pickers pages and bluegrass music pages and just general interest pages on Facebook and beyond.
And promoting the shit out of it while you're on stage, right?
As much as possible. Another part of that is we did make we made a URL that links to our Kickstarter that was more memorable than, kickstarter.com/help Tonewood, blah, 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 blah.
Scan this QR, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
so we
blah,
did a
blah.
QR.
Everybody's lazy
We
and
did a
never
URL
get to it.
that's helptonewood.com, and then Steve had the brilliant idea to make a video and make us a second URL that I didn't know about until I got to laugh my ass off about it, which basically is tonelyfans.net. So, if it was looking really bad, we might have been selling some feet pics, and that might be in your behind the scenes. If you throw $50 in on the Kickstarter, might get a couple of pictures of Elijah's toes and maybe mine. Who knows?
Could be a stretch
For
goal.
$1,000 donation, you can watch Steve dip his feet into heavy whipping cream.
No, I mean we'll do it into hot sauce.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about that. Was that for your mid-mark for 18,000, or when did that come about? Whose idea was it? Because it was great, right? It was if you guys haven't checked it out, they were trying to raise money to get to their mid-marker, and then you guys had to eat a bunch of fucking hot sauce.
Yeah, that was Steve's idea originally. Steve was like, we were trying to think of like what can we do for like a mid-campaign event, just to keep the momentum going and just to like make sure that we can hit like a mid-mark goal. And I thought of like maybe we could do like a show, but like we didn't have enough time before to actually do like book a venue and do a show or something. And Steve was like, well, have you guys ever seen Hot Ones? I love this show, and we should do something like that and try and eat hot sauce and then play music. And so Steve was kind of the genesis of the whole thing, and then he actually, hosted at his place, got the hot sauces. I think you got that from Hot Ones, Steve?
Yeah, it's the official like Hot Ones pack, the 10
the assortment
the 10
pack of Hot
the
Ones.
10. And in the show, they're doing a one-on-one interview, and it's amusing because they're asking interview questions and trying to respond while they're also, dying of the hot sauce. And I thought, a similar sort of our eyes, and and I thought, it would be cool to make it a live video so that we can interact with, the people who are watching and get, maybe for $50 we'll do this challenge right, in the next 10 minutes, kind of some like old school like, PBS fundraising kind of ideas and things like that. And as it happened, we did get something like that.
Yeah.
Somebody asked how much would it cost for Steve to take a shot of, one of the hotter sauces, and somebody in the band shouted out 200, which honestly I think is a little low.
Pretty low
for that. But we ended up getting about 450 within the next few minutes pledged to the Kickstarters for that. And so, so I took the hot sauce, and I think that was the beginning of the end for me in the video.
That was literally the hottest hot sauce that he did a shot of too. That was the one that like we'd been doing videos all week leading up to the live video on Friday. And everybody that would comment, like, we were like, comment what songs you want to hear and what hot sauces we should try and this and that. And the one that everybody said was like the worst hot sauce they had tried as far as like heat and pain goes was this one called Da Bomb, which that was the one Steve did a shot of. So he was definitely
normally they give you a taste of it on the tip of a toothpick, and they're like, here.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it, Steve? You've handled it okay.
It was tough. I was hurting afterwards for sure.
He was laying on the floor after the video ended, just like, oh.
That's so funny. So my brother, because I've like I said, I've done a bunch of dumb shit for a long time. I went back to Minnesota with one of my older brothers, and he's like, "Hey, I want to do one of your stupid fucking videos on the internet." So he's like, "Let's go live, and we're gonna eat Carolina Reapers."
No,
Bro,
Carolina Reapers are no joke, dude.
that was the worst fucking decision I had ever made in my life. I'm sitting there chewing on this pepper. My brother just stone-faced, just like takes 3 chews, fucking swallows it. I'm like chewing on it like it's a piece of bubble gum. I'm fucking dying. And he's just sitting next to me, like no reaction whatsoever. I end up vomiting because it was so fucking hot. So it's hot going down and coming up, in case you were wondering. And then the second my video stopped, then my brother's like, "Oh my God," I was like, "Fuck you. You just made me look like such a wimp." And then now you're like, "Oh, this is fucking hot." And I was like, "God damn it, Kyan. That's fucking awful." And so when I saw you guys were doing the hot sauce thing, I was like, "That's pretty fucking dope." But do you actually like spicy food, or are you just masochists?
Steve's a masochist for sure. He was suffering pretty bad by the end of that. I love spicy food. I actually really enjoy it, except for Da Bomb, which wasn't even the hottest in terms of like Scoville units. But like I would eat 4 or 5 of those hot sauces just as regular condiments on food. I liked them. We had kind of a running bet of who was going to be the worst off from the event. We were all kind of betting it would be Evan, because Evan has a pretty bland palate normally, but he did great. Steve was the one that suffered, I think, the most visibly from the actual.
Well, you're making him chug an ounce of fucking hot sauce. Of course he's having a hard time, right?
Yeah.
So now we're so close, right? So like what I want to ask you guys is, what is your ask to the people? Tell them why you want to make this album, because realistically it's not just for you, it's for us as a music community, right? So let's kind of get to it of like, hey, for the Tonewood String Band, for this new EP, what is it that you guys want? What's the vision that you see, and why should somebody donate to your Kickstarter so that we can get this thing made?
Well, the goal of this album is, in my mind, we want to make something that's going to be enduring and representative of this band. And I'll pretty much say what I've been saying to everybody I've reached out to during the Kickstarter in the last month. And I mean this, it's the best band I've ever been a part of. And more than half my life playing music, this is the most fun. It's the best people. It's the best music I've ever been making. And it's one of those things that, like, when we were getting ready to do the Kickstarter, I was talking with Silver, and she's like, there are a lot of bands in the bluegrass world and beyond that, like, their first album is my favorite album they've ever made, and it's like, it not only puts them on the map, but it like really, really means a lot to me. I love that album that band put out, and that's been our goal with the music we're making this year, is to like really just make music that we really love and that really is authentic to who we are and who we are as a band and who we are as individual people. I can say, at least from my experience, it's been amazing this year to see the response from crowds and fans, just in terms of the music we're making, the new songs we're getting ready to record. And I really feel like this album is going to be something that is just worth listening to for a long time to come. It's going to be something that people are really going to enjoy for a long time.
That's awesome. Boys, do you have anything else that you want to add on the album, or an ask to your fans or to people that haven't heard you? Why should they listen to Tonewood? Why should they give you guys a shot?
Because Steve has the sexiest voice on the planet.
That's fucking true. Steve.
No, I'll just mention that we have a lot of great original music. I mean, primarily George and Evan, but even the other two guys. Everybody writes a little bit for this group, and we have a lot of good original material. I've been part of bands in the past where we've mostly played covers, and covers are great, and we love playing some popular covers, but it would be really nice to get this original music laid down and done well and recorded well, so that we can share it with not just the folks that are regionally, locally here in the Front Range, but coming from the East Coast. I have a lot of friends and family from back there that haven't seen me live. Videos are one thing of live performances that you see pop up on socials, but it'd be really nice to be able to get this music out there to other parts of the world.
Let's send these boys couch surfing. Now, Matt, as the backbone of the band, we know we can't go anywhere without the bassist, right? So what is it that you love? Because like we talked a little bit with George before when you had cut out that he had kind of started as a jam grass, right? And so like that period where you're just letting the band vibe and play. Well, for you kind of have to hold them all together and give them something to come back to, right? So what is it that you love about Tonewood and playing with them and some of these musicians that you're playing with that is different?
Man, I've played with a lot of really talented musicians, and I've been in, uh, I've gotten the opportunity to play with some just like nationally touring acts and really top-notch individuals. And I can't say that, well, here's what I can say. I've never been more excited to record an album than I am for this Tonewood record, because the work that we've put in on these songs and the amount of talent in this band is just unbelievable. And it's like, I feel like it's criminal that it's taken us this long to get a serious recording together. So I'm just like beyond excited. I mean, honestly, there's like, I've never wanted to make a record more than this,
Well, let's make this fucking record. All right.
Right?
So, my challenge to all of our listeners, to social media, to everyone, is let us get them past their goal. We are less than $2,500 for them fulfilling what they need to do. And that's really just the beginning, right? Because they will continue to need your support. Once the album gets made, we need you to listen to it. We need you to share it with your friends, not just the people here in our backyards. Get them up to the Midwest. Go to the Blue Ox Festival, Delfest. There's all sorts of places that we can go and get this band out. I have seen a fuckload of bluegrass bands in my 30 years of going to shows. Tonewood is special. And that is exactly why I had them on here. And that's not just the musicians saying that they're special. That's me as a fan, right? And that this had nothing to do with me. I saw that they needed some help, and I was like, I want to fucking help them because they're so special that they need to be shared with everyone else. So what we need is monetary donations. I need you to go on to Kickstarter. What's the custom URL, George?
Tonewood.com.
Well, that's too fucking easy, so you can't complain. Helptonewood.com. Get on there. We have until the end of day tomorrow, Tuesday, November 19th. So you guys need to get out there. Let's push them through, and then let's put some fucking pressure on them to put out this beautiful music, and let's go check it out. Once this album is made, do you guys have upcoming shows already scheduled? And I know that you have like the Backers show and some of these other things planned, but where are some of the next stops that people can come and visit you guys to see this in person? Because like Steve says, saying, like, yes, recordings are great and you can get some sort of feeling, but until you're there and you hear this man sing and you hear you guys playing, it's different, right? So where are your next couple of shows?
That is a great question.
We will be.
George is like, well, fuck, let me go.
We'll be at the Goosetown Tavern on Saturday the 23rd with our buddies Liver Down the River for their album release party.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And that's here in Golden. So that's like less than 7 minutes away.
No. So it's the Goosetown Tavern, which is across the street from the Bluebird.
Not Goosetown Station.
Yeah. Don't go to Golden. You're going to be, there's probably going to be music there, but it's not going to be us. So
it's not them. Okay, I'm an idiot. Don't fucking listen to me. Go to their fucking website and find the actual right fucking venue to go check out. What I wanted to do is I wanted to thank you guys. It's been amazing talking to you. I really appreciate it. We're going to get this out to people. I will share it everywhere that I can. And realistically, I think once people hear your guys' story, hear who you are as people and as musicians, what your aspirations are, we are an incredible community that comes together. Let's come together. Let's support these guys. Let's get them out there. And for any of those musicians who are sitting in their basement or sitting in their room who are afraid to go and play in front of somebody else, go join a pick. Go find somebody to play in front of. Don't let your dream die either. And then when you get to this point, we will come together and fucking support you too, right? Because we do this as a whole. You get in this world what you put out. And I firmly believe that Tonewood deserves everything that they have coming to them. And I'm so excited to see the ascension of where these guys go. And we can be there from the ground floor. So let's get shit done. Steve, Matt, George, thank you. Elijah and Evan, you're fucking lazy. No, I'm kidding. I love you guys. You have other shit to do. I really just wanted to see the fucking mustache and make my Ned Flanders joke. But I'm going to make that Photoshop and I'm going to put that shit out on my social media.
You should.
And I will. And we will get shit done. Thank you, gentlemen, for everything. I look forward to it. Let's get you to the homeland.
Thank you, Cody. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Cody.
All right, guys.
Appreciate you.